A street musician playing for spare change. A CEO worth millions walking past. 3 minutes of music. And suddenly, a man who hadn't felt anything in years was sobbing on a sidewalk. This is what happened after he ran away, carrying the mingled scents of beignets, river water, and jasmine from the courtyards hidden behind wrought iron gates. Daniel Parker loosened his tie as he walked down Royal Street, his Italian leather shoes clicking against the uneven sidewalks that had seen centuries of footsteps before his. The meeting had been a disaster. 3 hours of parsing through legal documents, and he was no closer to a decision about tech venture capital's offer. $42 million. Enough to secure his future, pay off every debt, and finally stop the constant churning in his stomach that had been his companion since his brother died. But it would also mean laying off 60% of his staff, people with families, people who had believed in his vision when it was just him and a laptop in a cramped apartment above a po' boy shop on Magazine Street. Daniel pressed his fingers against his temples, trying to push away the beginning of a headache. He had told himself he would walk the quarter for 20 minutes, clear his head, then call an Uber back to his condo in the warehouse district. Simple, straightforward, the way he handled everything these days. That was when he heard it. The music drifted through the evening air like smoke, curling around the lamplight and tourists with cameras. A woman's voice, raw and honest, singing words that felt like they were pulled from somewhere deep and true. The melody wrapped around him, stopping his feet mid-stride. Hallelujah, hallelujah. Daniel found himself drawn toward the sound, past the antique shops and art galleries, past couples holding hands and groups laughing over giant plastic cups of something neon-colored. He turned the corner onto the intersection of Royal and St. Peter, and there she was. She sat on a weathered wooden stool, a guitar cradled against her body like it was part of her. Her dark hair fell in waves past her shoulders, and her eyes were closed as she sang. A few bills and coins lay scattered in the open guitar case at her feet, along with a handwritten sign that read, "Thank you for listening, Maya." Daniel had not cried since the funeral. Not when he stood at the podium and delivered the eulogy. Not when he sorted through his brother Tommy's apartment, finding half-finished sketches and a journal full of dreams. Not during the long nights when he threw himself into work, building his company as if success could somehow fill the crater Tommy's absence had left. But standing there on that street corner, with the lights of Jackson Square glowing in the distance and the Mississippi River flowing dark and eternal beyond the levee, Daniel felt something crack open inside his chest. The tears came suddenly, unexpectedly, rolling down his cheeks as this stranger sang about broken hallelujahs and cold and broken feelings. His breath caught in his throat, his vision blurred. Maya's eyes opened. For one terrible, exposed moment, their gazes met. Her fingers stumbled on the strings, the music faltering. Daniel saw surprise flash across her face, then something else. Something that looked almost like recognition, though they had never met. Panic surged through him. He turned and walked away quickly, nearly colliding with a group taking a ghost tour. Behind him the music resumed, softer now, as if she was singing just for him, even as he fled. Daniel did not stop until he reached the cathedral, its white spires rising against the darkening sky. He leaned against the iron fence surrounding Jackson Square, his heart pounding, his face wet with tears he could not seem to stop. What the hell had just happened? He pulled out his phone with shaking hands, opening a car service app. He needed to get home, take a shower, pour a drink. Forget this moment of weakness, this crack in the armor he had built so carefully around himself. But as the car wound through the narrow streets of the French Quarter, Daniel found himself looking back, searching for a glimpse of the corner where she sang, the woman with the guitar, Maya. The music had cracked something open inside him, and now he could not seem to close it again. Back on Royal Street, Maya Chen packed her guitar carefully into its battered case, her hands still trembling slightly. She had been performing on street corners for 2 years now, and she had seen every reaction possible. People danced, people ignored her, people stopped to request songs or tell her about their ex-wives or slip wedding rings into her case along with dollar bills. But she had never made someone cry like that before. The man in the expensive suit with his perfect haircut and his face twisted in sudden grief. The way he had looked at her, really looked at her, before running away as if she had burned him. Maya counted her earnings for the night. $73. Not bad for a Wednesday. enough for groceries and maybe a little left over. She slung the guitar case over her shoulder and started the walk back to her apartment on Dauphine Street, a tiny second-floor place she shared with too many cockroaches and a radiator that clanked like it was possessed. "You look like you saw a ghost share," a gravelly voice called out. Maya smiled despite herself. Louis Baptiste sat on his usual perch on the corner of Dauphine and Barracks, his ancient saxophone resting across his knees. The old jazz musician had been performing in the quarter since before Maya was born, and he had appointed himself her unofficial mentor and protector. "Something like that," Maya said, stopping beside him. "Louis, have you ever had someone just break down when you were playing?" Louis's weathered face creased into 1,000 wrinkles as he smiled. "Oh, honey, music is dangerous. It sneaks past all the walls people build. Sometimes it finds things they buried so deep they forgot they were there." He tapped his temple. "That's when you know you're doing something real." "It scared me a little," Maya admitted. "Good," Louis said firmly. "Art should scare you. If it doesn't, you're just making pretty noise." He picked up his saxophone. "Now get home, it's going to rain." Maya looked up at the clear sky skeptically, but she had learned not to doubt Louis. The man had some kind of sixth sense about New Orleans weather. She waved goodbye and continued home, climbing the narrow stairs to her apartment. Inside, she set down her guitar and collapsed onto her threadbare couch. Through the thin walls, she could hear her neighbor's television and someone upstairs arguing in French, the familiar sounds of home. But her mind kept returning to the man on the street, the way his face had transformed from blank corporate efficiency to raw, devastating grief in the space of a breath, the way he had run, as if she had reached into his chest and touched something sacred and secret. Maya pulled out her own phone and opened the voice memo app. She did this sometimes when a melody came to her. She hummed a few bars, trying to capture the feeling of the moment. Something about walls coming down. About the courage it takes to feel anything at all. Outside, rain began to fall, just as Louis had predicted. It drummed against her window, mixing with the distant sound of someone playing trumpet on Frenchman Street. Maya wondered if the man in the suit was listening to the rain too. If he was thinking about the moment their eyes met. If he would ever come back. She picked up her guitar and began to play, letting the music carry her away from the questions that had no answers. Not yet, anyway. But somewhere deep inside, she had a feeling this was just the beginning. Daniel told himself he would not go back. He had work to do. Tech Venture Capital wanted an answer by Friday, which gave him exactly 4 days to decide whether to become a millionaire or keep his conscience intact. Those 4 days should be spent in conference calls and spreadsheets, not wandering the French Quarter like a lost tourist. And yet, Thursday evening found him parking his Tesla near the riverfront and walking toward Royal Street with his heart hammering in his chest like a teenager on a first date. He felt ridiculous. He was a 32-year-old CEO. He had given presentations to venture capitalists, negotiated contracts with Fortune 500 companies, and built a business from nothing. But the thought of facing the woman who had witnessed his breakdown made his palms sweat. The street was more crowded tonight. A juggler performed near the corner, and a group of college students stumbled past, already drunk despite it being barely 7 o'clock. Daniel almost turned around 3 times before he finally saw her. Maya sat in the same spot, her guitar gleaming under the streetlights. Tonight she wore a vintage band t-shirt and jeans with holes in the knees, looking nothing like the polished musicians who performed at the galas Daniel usually attended. She was playing something upbeat, something that made people smile as they passed. But when she saw him standing there 20 feet away and frozen like a deer in headlights, her fingers slowed. The song shifted into something quieter, more intimate. Daniel forced his feet to move. He approached her slowly, pulling out his wallet. His hands shook slightly as he withdrew a $20 bill and placed it in her guitar case. "That's too much," Maya said softly, her fingers still moving across the strings. "It's not enough," Daniel replied, his voice rougher than he intended. They looked at each other for a long moment. Up close, Daniel could see the calluses on her fingertips, the small scar above her left eyebrow, the way her dark eyes seemed to look straight through all his carefully constructed walls. "I'm sorry," he said finally, "about the other night. I don't usually—" He trailed off, unsure how to explain what had happened. He did not understand it himself. You don't need to apologize, Maya said. She finished the song and let her hands rest on the guitar. Music does strange things to people. Opens doors we didn't know were locked. Poetic, Daniel said, and then winced. He was acting like an ass, using sarcasm as a shield the way he always did when he felt vulnerable. But Maya just smiled. Occupational hazard. I'm Maya, by the way. Maya Chen. Daniel Parker. He hesitated, then added, I wanted to thank you for the music. It meant something. What did it mean? Maya asked, genuine curiosity in her voice. Daniel opened his mouth, then closed it. How could he explain that her music had cracked open 3 years of carefully maintained numbness? That for the first time since Tommy died, he had felt something other than the dull ache of loss and the sharp focus of work. I don't know yet, he said honestly. Maya studied him for a moment, then patted the concrete wall beside her stool. Sit, if you want. Everything in Daniel's training, his upbringing, his carefully curated image, said he should politely decline and walk away. CEOs did not sit on dirty street corners. They did not make friends with street performers. They certainly did not bare their souls to strangers. Daniel sat. So what does a guy in $1,000 suit do for a living? Maya asked, her fingers absently plucking out a gentle melody. Tech, software development. Daniel loosened his tie, suddenly aware of how overdressed he was. And this suit cost $800, not $1,000. Oh, well, that's completely different then, Maya said with mock seriousness, practically bargain basement. Despite everything, Daniel laughed. When was the last time someone had teased him? His employees treated him with careful respect, his investors with predatory interest, and his family. Well, there was not much family left to speak of. What about you? He asked. Have you always been a street musician? Something flickered across Maya's face. There and gone so quickly, Daniel almost missed it. Pain, maybe, or regret. Not always. I used to have different dreams, but life has a way of editing your plans. Tell me about it, Daniel muttered. They sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes, watching the flow of people through the quarter. A bachelorette party stumbled past, the bride-to-be wearing a plastic tiara and shrieking with laughter. An elderly couple walked by slowly, hand in hand, their silver hair gleaming in the lamplight. Your brother, Maya said quietly. The song made you think of your brother. Daniel's head snapped toward her. How did you... Just a guess, Maya said quickly. The look on your face. I have a brother too, well had. He moved to California and we don't really talk anymore. She strummed a minor chord. Family is complicated. Tommy died 3 years ago, Daniel heard himself say. Car accident. He was 24. I'm sorry. Everyone's sorry, Daniel said, but there was no bitterness in his voice now, just exhaustion. Sorry doesn't bring him back. Sorry doesn't make the hole go away. Maya nodded slowly. No, it doesn't. But sometimes music helps. It doesn't fix anything, but it makes the hole feel less lonely. Daniel looked at her, really looked at her, and saw something in her eyes that matched the ache in his chest. She knew about loss, about the kind of pain that carved you hollow. Play something for me? He asked. Something that makes the hole less lonely? Maya's lips curved into a small smile. Any requests? Surprise me. She began to play, and this time Daniel did not run. He sat there on the corner of Royal and St. Peter, his expensive suit getting dusty, his carefully managed schedule forgotten, and let the music wash over him like rain. People dropped bills in her case as they passed, but Maya did not seem to notice. Her eyes were closed, her whole being focused on the guitar and the melody flowing from her fingers. She sang about rivers that remembered everything, about cities built on floods and jazz and second chances. When she finished, Daniel realized he was smiling. Actually smiling, not the professional mask he wore to board meetings. That was beautiful, he said. Did you write it? Years ago, Maya said. Back when I thought I'd play Carnegie Hall someday. She laughed, but it held an edge of something darker. We all have dreams we bury, right? Why did you bury yours? Daniel asked. Maya's hands stilled on the guitar. For a moment he thought she would tell him to mind his own business. Instead, she said, because sometimes the stage feels more like a cage than freedom, and sometimes the people you trust... She shook her head. It's a long story. Not one for a first conversation. Then we'll need a second conversation, Daniel said, surprising himself. Maya looked at him, really looked at him the way she had that first night. Yeah, she said softly. I think maybe we will. A raindrop landed on Daniel's nose, then another. Within seconds, the sky opened up. That sudden, drenching rain New Orleans was famous for. People scattered, running for cover. Come on! Maya shouted over the downpour, laughing as she threw her guitar into its case. I know a place! Before Daniel could overthink it, he grabbed one end of her guitar case and they ran together through the rain, past the antique shops and art galleries, turning onto Decatur Street. Maya led him to a small cafe tucked between a praline shop and a voodoo museum. The neon sign flickered, Evangeline's Coffee House. Inside, they collapsed into a booth, soaking wet and breathless. Maya pushed her dripping hair out of her face, and Daniel realized he was laughing. Really laughing, the kind of deep, genuine laughter he had not felt in years. You look like a drowned rat, Maya said, grinning. You look like a drowned guitarist, Daniel shot back. Touché. The owner, a round woman with kind eyes and a heavy Cajun accent, brought them towels and coffee without being asked. You two need to learn to check the weather, she scolded, but she was smiling. As Daniel dried his face and watched Maya wrap her hands around her steaming mug, he realized something had shifted. The constant tightness in his chest had eased, just a little. The world felt less gray. He did not know what was happening between them. He did not know if this was the beginning of a friendship or something more. He did not know if he was making a terrible mistake by letting someone past his walls. But for the first time in 3 years, Daniel Parker wanted to find out. The rain drummed against the windows of Evangeline's Coffee House as Daniel and Maya sat across from each other, their coffee growing cold. The cafe was nearly empty now. Just an old man reading a newspaper in the corner and a couple sharing beignets at the counter. So, Maya said, breaking the comfortable silence, tech CEO. That sounds stressful. It has its moments, Daniel said, thinking about the contract sitting on his desk, waiting for his signature. Right now, I'm trying to decide whether to sell my company. Maya's eyebrows rose. That's a big decision. Why would you sell? Money, security, the American dream. Daniel heard the hollowness in his own voice, but it would mean laying off most of my employees. Good people who believed in me. Sounds like you already know what you want to do, Maya observed. Knowing and doing are different things, Daniel said. My investors think I'm crazy for hesitating. They say business is business, not charity. He paused. What would you do? Maya was quiet for a moment, her fingers tracing the rim of her mug. I walked away from a full scholarship to Juilliard to play on street corners, so maybe I'm not the best person to ask about practical decisions. Daniel leaned forward. Juilliard? You turned down Juilliard. Not exactly turned down, Maya said, her voice careful. I went, studied classical guitar for 2 years. I was going to be the next big thing in concert music. She laughed bitterly. My professor, Dr. Richard Vaughan, he said I had generational talent, that I could play Carnegie Hall, Lincoln Center, all of it. What happened? Maya's hands stilled. He happened. He was my mentor, my advisor. I trusted him completely. She took a breath. Turns out he was stealing from me. I had a small trust fund from my grandmother, money for school and living expenses. He convinced me to let him manage it, said he'd invest it for me. By the time I found out, he'd drained almost everything. $40,000 gone. Jesus, Daniel breathed. Did you report him? To who? He was tenured faculty, connected, respected. I was a 20-year-old student with no proof except his word against mine. Maya's voice was flat now, emotionless. And then came the recital, my big showcase. I was supposed to play for all these important people, agents and venue managers. I walked on stage and just froze. Complete stage fright. I couldn't play a single note. Because of what he did to you. Because I couldn't trust anything anymore, Maya corrected. Not the music, not the stage, not myself, so I left. Came back to New Orleans, where my aunt lives. Started playing on streets where nobody expected anything from me except a few songs. She met his eyes. So yeah, I ran away, just like you ran away from me that first night. The comparison stung because it was true. I'm sorry, Daniel said, about your professor, about all of it. Don't be sorry, be angry, Maya said fiercely. That's what I'm learning. It's okay to be angry about the things that break us. They sat with that for a moment. Outside, the rain was beginning to ease. Tommy wanted to be an artist, Daniel said suddenly. A painter. He was actually good too. But my father kept pushing him toward business school, toward realistic careers. His jaw tightened. The night before the accident, we had a fight. I told him maybe Dad was right, that he needed to grow up and think about his future. Daniel, the last thing I said to my brother was that his dreams were childish, Daniel continued, his voice rough. And then a drunk driver ran a red light and Tommy was gone, and I never got to tell him I was wrong, that he should have painted, that his dreams mattered more than Dad's approval or my stupid advice. Maya reached across the table and took his hand. Her fingers were warm and calloused, strong from years of guitar strings. Is that why you started your company? For him? Daniel nodded. Tech Venture started as his idea, actually. A platform to connect freelance artists with clients. I built it after he died, made it successful. Proof that his dreams weren't childish. He laughed without humor. And now I'm about to sell it to a corporation that'll gut everything it stands for. Then don't, Maya said simply. It's not that simple. I have investors, board members, employees who need stability. It is that simple, Maya interrupted. Not easy, but simple. You either honor what your brother wanted or you don't. Says the woman who gave up Juilliard, Daniel shot back, then immediately regretted it. I'm sorry, that was true, Maya finished. You're right. I gave up. I let fear win. She squeezed his hand. Maybe we both need to stop running. The cafe owner appeared at their table. We're closing up, Cher. But you two can stay a few more minutes if you need. They thanked her and sat in the dimming light, still holding hands across the table. This is crazy, Daniel said. I barely know you. Yeah, Maya agreed. Completely insane. I have a board meeting tomorrow at 9. I'm supposed to give them my decision about the sale. And? Daniel looked at her, at this woman who had somehow become impossibly important in the span of 2 rainy evenings. And I think I'm about to make a very expensive mistake. Maya smiled and it lit up her whole face. Sometimes expensive mistakes are the only ones worth making. They walked out together into the rain-washed streets. The air smelled clean, renewed. The quarter seemed to glow under the streetlights, every surface slick and shining. Can I see you again? Daniel asked. Not on the street corner. Actually see you. Are you asking me on a date, Mr. Parker? Daniel, he corrected. And yes, I am. Tomorrow night, Maya said. There's a jazz show at Preservation Hall, 7 o'clock. Meet me there? I'll be there. They stood awkwardly for a moment, neither wanting to leave but unsure how to say goodbye. Finally, Maya stood on her toes and kissed his cheek. Thank you, she whispered, for listening, for not running this time. Thank you for not letting me, Daniel replied. He watched her walk away into the night, her guitar case slung over her shoulder, and felt something unfamiliar blooming in his chest. Hope, maybe, or possibility, or just the dangerous, terrifying feeling that his carefully controlled life was about to get very complicated. His phone buzzed. A text from his board chair. Need your decision first thing AM. Tech Venture won't wait forever. Daniel looked at the message, then at Maya's retreating figure. He thought about Tommy's paintings, still boxed up in his storage unit, about the employees who had families and mortgages and dreams, about the woman who made him feel something other than numb for the first time in years. He typed back, I'll have an answer in the morning, but deep down he already knew what that answer would be. Maya climbed the stairs to her apartment, her clothes still damp, her heart hammering. What was she doing? She had sworn off complications, sworn off letting anyone close enough to hurt her again. And yet here she was, agreeing to a date with a man who looked at her like she held answers to questions he had not even learned to ask yet. You look like you swallowed sunshine, Louis called from his doorway across the hall. The old saxophonist was in his bathrobe, a cup of tea in his gnarled hands. I might have done something stupid, Maya admitted. Good, Louis said firmly. Smart only gets you so far. Stupid gets you stories worth telling. He winked. He the one who cried? Yeah. Then he's got a heart that still works. That's rarer than you think, Cher. Louis sipped his tea. Don't overthink it. Sometimes the best music happens when you stop reading the sheet and just play. Maya smiled and let herself into her apartment. She set down her guitar and picked up her phone, hesitating over her mother's number. They had not talked in 6 months, not since their last fight about Maya's wasted potential. Instead, she opened her voice memo app and began to hum a melody. Something new, something that felt like rainy streets and unexpected connections, and the terrifying possibility of letting someone in. Tomorrow night, Preservation Hall. A real date, not just a chance encounter on a street corner. Maya Chen was absolutely terrified. And for the first time in 2 years, she could not wait to see what happened next. Daniel arrived at the boardroom 15 minutes early, which was 13 minutes later than usual. He had spent the night staring at his ceiling, thinking about Tommy's paintings and Maya's calloused fingers, and the weight of decisions that could not be undone. His board chair, Margaret Chen, no relation to Maya, he had already checked, sat at the head of the polished mahogany table, her silver hair pulled into a severe bun. The other board members filtered in. Robert from marketing, Jennifer from operations, and Marcus, his oldest investor, and closest thing to a friend in the corporate world. Daniel, Margaret said crisply, I trust you have good news for us. Tech Venture has been very patient. Daniel set his laptop on the table but did not open it. I'm not selling. The silence was deafening. I'm sorry? Margaret's voice could have frozen the Mississippi. I'm not selling the company, Daniel repeated, his voice steady despite his racing heart. Not to Tech Venture, not to anyone. We're staying independent. That's financial suicide, Robert sputtered. We're barely breaking even. Without this capital, we'll find another way, Daniel interrupted. We'll cut costs, restructure, maybe take on smaller investors who share our vision. But I'm not laying off 60% of our staff to line our pockets. Marcus leaned forward, his expression unreadable. Daniel, I've known you for 5 years. This isn't like you. What changed? Daniel thought about Maya sitting in the rain-soaked cafe, telling him that sometimes expensive mistakes were the only ones worth making. About Tommy's last painting, still unfinished, still waiting for colors that would never come. I remembered why I started this company, Daniel said. It wasn't about the money. It was about creating something that mattered, something that would have made my brother proud. Your brother is dead, Margaret said bluntly, and sentiment doesn't pay salaries. No, but integrity does, Daniel shot back. We're good at what we do. We'll find clients who value that, and if we can't, then maybe we deserve to fail. The meeting devolved into arguments, threats of resignation, and stern warnings about fiduciary responsibility. 2 hours later, Daniel walked out having lost his board chair and one investor, but keeping his soul intact. Marcus caught up with him in the parking garage. That was either the bravest or stupidest thing I've ever seen. Probably both, Daniel admitted. For what it's worth, I'm staying. Your brother would have been proud. Marcus clapped him on the shoulder. Though you better have a hell of a plan, because we're about to find out if noble bankruptcy is a real thing. Daniel laughed despite everything. I'm working on it. He spent the rest of the day in crisis management mode, calling clients, reassuring employees, and sketching out a new business strategy that did not involve selling his soul. By 6:30, he was exhausted, terrified, and possibly about to lose everything he had built. But when he walked into Preservation Hall at 7 o'clock sharp, none of that mattered. Maya stood near the entrance, wearing a vintage dress the color of red wine, her hair loose around her shoulders. She smiled when she saw him, and Daniel felt his chest tighten in a way that had nothing to do with business stress. You came, she said. Did you think I wouldn't? I hoped you would. Maya gestured to the hall. Come on. The show's about to start. Preservation Hall was a New Orleans institution, a small, intimate venue where jazz had been played for decades. The walls were worn, the benches uncomfortable, and the acoustics perfect. They squeezed onto a bench near the back, their shoulders pressed together in the crowded space. The band took the stage, trumpet, clarinet, trombone, piano, bass, and drums. The music started slow, a mournful blues that seemed to seep into Daniel's bones. Then it shifted, building into something wild and joyful, the kind of improvisation that only happened when musicians stopped thinking and just felt. Daniel glanced at Maya. Her eyes were closed, her body swaying slightly to the rhythm. She looked peaceful in a way he had not seen before, like the music was a language she understood better than words. When the set ended, they spilled out onto St. Peter Street with the rest of the crowd, the night air warm and alive with possibilities. Coffee, Daniel suggested, or something stronger? Walk with me, Maya said instead. I want to show you something. She led him through the quarter, past the bright chaos of Bourbon Street, and into the quieter residential areas where locals actually lived. They walked down Chartres Street, then turned onto a narrow alley Daniel had never noticed before. Where are we going? He asked. You'll see. The alley opened into a small courtyard, hidden behind an old Creole cottage. Jasmine climbed the brick walls, and a fountain burbled softly in the center. String lights hung overhead, casting everything in a warm golden glow. This is my secret place, Maya said softly. I found it when I first moved back to New Orleans. Nobody comes here except me. It's beautiful, Daniel said, and he meant it. They sat on the edge of the fountain, close enough that their knees touched. The sounds of the quarter were distant here, muffled by old walls and time. How did the board meeting go? Maya asked. Daniel laughed. I think I might have just committed career suicide. You didn't sell. I didn't sell. He told her about the meeting, about Margaret's resignation, and the uncertain future ahead. Marcus thinks I'm either brave or stupid. I'm leaning towards stupid. I think you're brave, Maya said firmly. It takes courage to choose values over security, says the woman who gave up Juilliard. Touché. Maya smiled. Though maybe we're both learning that sometimes you have to lose everything to find what actually matters. And what matters? Daniel asked. Maya was quiet for a moment, her fingers trailing through the fountain water. I don't know yet, but I'm starting to think it has something to do with being honest, with yourself, with other people, with the music. Are you thinking about performing again? Real performing, not just street corners. Maya's expression shuttered. I don't know if I can. The stage fright, the panic. What if I freeze again? Then you freeze, Daniel said, and then you try again. That's what courage is, right? Not the absence of fear, but doing it anyway. When did you become so wise? About 5 minutes ago, apparently. Daniel took her hand. Maya, you have so much talent. I heard it in your music. Don't let one bad experience steal that from you. It wasn't just one bad experience, Maya said quietly. It was betrayal. It was losing my trust in everything, in the music industry, in mentors, in my own judgment. I know, Daniel said, but you can't let him keep stealing from you. He took your money and your confidence. Don't let him take your future too. Maya looked at him, really looked at him, and Daniel saw tears shimmering in her eyes. Why do you care so much? Because you made me cry on a street corner, Daniel said, attempting humor but landing somewhere closer to truth. Because you reminded me that feeling something, even pain, is better than feeling nothing at all. Because when I'm with you, I remember what hope feels like. Maya leaned forward and kissed him. Not on the cheek this time, but properly, her lips soft and warm against his. The fountain sang behind them, the jasmine perfumed the air, and for one perfect moment, the world narrowed to just the two of them in this hidden courtyard. When they pulled apart, both breathing hard, Maya whispered, I'm terrified. Me too, Daniel admitted. Good, Maya said, echoing Louis's words from the night before. That means it matters. They sat in the courtyard until late, talking about everything and nothing. Daniel told her about Tommy's paintings, about the storage unit he could not bring himself to open. Maya told him about her mother, a classical pianist who had never forgiven her daughter for throwing away her talent. She wanted me to be her legacy, Maya explained. She gave up her own career to raise me and my brother. When I left Juilliard, it felt like I was rejecting everything she sacrificed. Have you talked to her since you came back? Maya shook her head. Every time I try, it turns into a fight. She doesn't understand why I can't just get over it, why I can't just walk back on stage and play. Maybe she needs to hear the whole story, Daniel suggested. About your professor, about what really happened. Maybe, Maya said, but she did not sound convinced. Eventually they walked back through the quarter, holding hands like teenagers. Daniel walked Maya to her building on Dauphine Street. Tomorrow? He asked. Tomorrow, she agreed. He kissed her goodnight, soft and sweet, then watched her disappear into her building. As he walked to his car, Daniel's phone buzzed with urgent emails about the company, about investors, about the chaos he had created with his decision. But for the first time in years, those things felt manageable. Not easy, but possible. Because somewhere between a street corner and a hidden courtyard, Daniel Parker had remembered how to hope, and that changed everything. 3 weeks passed in a blur of stolen moments and late-night conversations. Daniel restructured his company, working 18-hour days to prove his decision had not been suicide. Maya continued performing on Royal Street, but now she played with something new in her music. Joy, maybe, or hope. They met whenever they could. Coffee at Café du Monde at dawn, walks along the riverfront at sunset, dinners at hole-in-the-wall restaurants that only locals knew about. Daniel introduced Maya to his small circle of friends, and she introduced him to Louis, who immediately declared Daniel acceptable but could use more seasoning. It was perfect. Almost too perfect. Which is why Daniel should have known something would shatter it. It was a Tuesday evening when everything changed. Daniel had surprised Maya with tickets to a gallery opening in the Arts District, a showcase of emerging artists that featured one of Tommy's paintings. He had finally opened the storage unit, finally looked at his brother's work, and when the gallery owner saw them, she had insisted on including one in the show. Maya wore the red dress from their first date, and Daniel could not stop looking at her as they walked through the gallery. Other people admired the paintings, sipped wine, made the polite noises people make at art shows. But Maya stopped in front of Tommy's piece, a vibrant abstract of the Mississippi at sunset, and just stared. "He was really talented," she said softly. "Yeah," Daniel replied, his throat tight. "He was." A woman's voice cut through the gallery buzz. "Maya? Maya Chen?" Maya turned, and Daniel watched the color drain from her face. An elegant woman in her 50s approached, her silver-streaked hair pulled back, her expression a mixture of shock and something harder to define. "Mom," Maya breathed. Daniel had heard about Patricia Chen, the classical pianist who had given up her career, the mother Maya had not spoken to in months, but nothing had prepared him for the tension that crackled between them. "I didn't know you were in town," Maya said, her voice carefully neutral. "I'm playing with the Louisiana Philharmonic this week. Guest soloist." Patricia's eyes flicked to Daniel, assessing him in a single glance. "Are you going to introduce me to your friend?" "Daniel Parker, this is my mother, Patricia Chen." Maya's hand found Daniel's, holding tight. "Daniel, my mother." They shook hands, exchanging pleasantries that fooled no one. Patricia's smile was polished and empty. "I've been calling you," Patricia said to Maya. "You haven't returned my messages." "I've been busy. Playing on street corners." It was not a question. "I saw you last week." "On Royal Street, sitting on that filthy pavement like a common busker." "I am a busker, Mom," Maya said quietly. "You were supposed to be a concert guitarist. You were supposed to be at Juilliard, preparing for Carnegie Hall, not wasting your talent on drunk tourists." Daniel felt Maya's hand trembling in his. "Maybe we should take this somewhere private," he suggested. "No," Maya said, her voice stronger now. "It's fine. We're in public. She can't make a scene." She looked at her mother. "I left Juilliard for a good reason. I told you that." "You told me you had stage fright," Patricia said dismissively. "Everyone gets nervous. You don't throw away a full scholarship and a brilliant career because you're nervous." "It wasn't just nerves," Maya started, then stopped. Daniel could see the old shame creeping into her expression, the same look she had worn when she told him about her professor. "Then what was it?" Patricia demanded. "Because I sacrificed everything for your music. I gave up my career, my dreams, everything so you could have the opportunities I never had, and you just walked away. You made me your second chance," Maya said, her voice shaking now. "That wasn't fair. That was never fair. Life isn't fair, Maya, but talent like yours doesn't come along every generation, and you're wasting it." Daniel had heard enough. "With all due respect, Mrs. Chen, your daughter's talent isn't being wasted. I've heard her play. She's extraordinary." Patricia's gaze turned icy. "And what would you know about classical guitar, Mr. Parker?" "Nothing," Daniel admitted. "But I know about betrayal, about losing trust in everything you thought was solid. Maya went through something at Juilliard that—" "Daniel, don't," Maya interrupted. But it was too late. Patricia's expression had shifted from anger to curiosity. "Went through something? What are you talking about?" Maya closed her eyes. When she opened them, there was resignation there. "My professor, Dr. Vaughan, he was stealing from me. My trust fund, the money grandmother left me. He convinced me to let him manage it, and he took almost everything. Patricia's face went white. What? That's why I froze on stage. That's why I left. Because I couldn't trust anything anymore, not the music, not the institution, not my own judgment. Maya's voice cracked. I tried to tell you, but you wouldn't listen. You just kept saying I was giving up, that I was weak. You never told me about the money, Patricia whispered. I tried. You said I was making excuses. You said successful people push through adversity. Tears were streaming down Maya's face now. So I stopped trying to explain. I just left. The gallery had gone quiet. People were pretending not to stare while absolutely staring. Daniel put his arm around Maya's shoulders. I think we should go, he said gently. But Patricia reached out, her hand trembling. Maya, wait, please. I didn't know. If I had known. You should have listened, Maya said, her voice breaking. You should have trusted that I had a reason. Instead, you made it about you, about your sacrifices, about your disappointment in me. I'm sorry, Patricia said, and for the first time she sounded human. I'm so sorry. I was so focused on what you could become that I didn't see what you were going through. Maya wiped her eyes, smudging her makeup. I can't do this right now. I just can't. She pulled away from both of them and walked quickly toward the exit. Daniel hesitated, looking at Patricia's devastated face, then followed Maya. He found her outside, leaning against the brick wall, sobbing. Daniel pulled her into his arms and let her cry, not saying anything because there was nothing to say that would make it better. I'm sorry, Maya gasped between sobs. I'm sorry you had to see that. Don't apologize, Daniel said firmly. Your mother needed to hear the truth, even if it hurt. She looked so... Maya trailed off. Human, Daniel suggested. Regretful? Yeah, she did. They stood there for a long time, holding each other while the sounds of the city swirled around them. Eventually, Maya's tears subsided. She pulled back, trying to smile. Well, that was dramatic, very telenovela. Daniel laughed, despite everything. Your words from the day we met, life editing your plans. Yeah, Maya said quietly. Though I didn't expect my mother to show up at a gallery opening. She's playing with the Philharmonic this week, Daniel said thoughtfully. Maybe you should go see her perform. Maybe you two need to really talk. Maya looked at him like he had suggested she jump off a bridge. Are you insane? Possibly, Daniel admitted, but you told me not to let fear win, remember? Maybe it's time you took your own advice. Maya was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, There's something else. Something I haven't told you. Daniel's stomach tightened. What? The Philharmonic concert. It's at the Mahalia Jackson Theatre. They're doing a tribute to local musicians, and they asked me to be part of it. Months ago, before I met you, they wanted me to play a classical guitar piece during the intermission. Maya, that's amazing. Why didn't you tell me? Because I said no, Maya said miserably. I couldn't do it. The thought of being on that stage, in front of all those people. I panicked and said no. Daniel took her hands. Maybe it's time to say yes. I can't. Daniel, I literally cannot walk onto a stage without freezing. You don't understand what it's like. You're right, I don't, Daniel said. But I do understand what it's like to let fear make your decisions. I almost sold my company because I was afraid of failing. You stopped me from making that mistake. Let me help you avoid yours. It's not the same thing. Isn't it? Daniel challenged. You have this incredible gift, Maya, and you're letting one man's betrayal steal it from you. Don't give him that power. Maya pulled her hands away, wrapping her arms around herself. I need to think. I need to be alone for a while. Daniel's heart sank, but he nodded. Okay. Call me when you're ready. Yeah, Maya said, but she would not meet his eyes. She walked away into the night, leaving Daniel standing outside the gallery, wondering if he had just pushed too hard. If he had just lost the best thing to happen to him in years. Inside, through the gallery windows, he could see Patricia Chen still standing in front of Tommy's painting, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Families, Daniel thought. They break you, and make you, often at the same time. He pulled out his phone and looked at his calendar. The Philharmonic concert was in 4 days. 4 days for Maya to decide if she was ready to face her demons. 4 days for Daniel to figure out how to help her, without losing her in the process. He looked up at the night sky, at the stars barely visible through the city lights, and made a decision of his own. It was time to take a risk. A big one. And he could only hope it would not blow up in his face. Maya did not call. Not that night, not the next day, not the day after that. Daniel threw himself into work, but his mind kept wandering to her apartment on Dauphine Street, to the street corner where he had first heard her play, to the hidden courtyard where they had first kissed. On the third day, Louis showed up at Daniel's office. "How did you get past security?" Daniel asked, staring at the old saxophonist standing in his doorway in a threadbare jacket and a fedora that had seen better decades. "I told them I was your grandfather," Louis said cheerfully. "I'll need better security, Cher." Despite everything, Daniel laughed. "What are you doing here? Maya won't talk to you. She won't talk to her mama. Girls holed up in her apartment playing sad songs and eating ice cream." Louis settled into the chair across from Daniel's desk uninvited. "I figured someone needs to knock some sense into one of you, and you're easier to find." "I didn't mean to push her," Daniel said. "I just thought—" "You thought she needed to face her fears. You were right." Louis pulled out his saxophone and absently polished the keys with his sleeve. "But you can't make someone brave, Daniel. They got to choose it themselves. So what do I do?" "You show her it's worth choosing." Louis's weathered face creased into a smile. "You show her what's waiting on the other side of fear." An idea began forming in Daniel's mind. Crazy, expensive, possibly disastrous. "Louis," he said slowly, "how would you like to help me with something incredibly stupid?" The old musician's grin widened. "Now you're talking my language." The night of the Philharmonic concert arrived. Daniel stood backstage at the Mahalia Jackson Theatre, his heart pounding so hard he thought he might pass out. He had never been this nervous, not during his first investor pitch, not when he launched his company, not even at Tommy's funeral. Patricia Chen found him in the wings. She looked elegant in a black concert gown, her hair swept up but her eyes were red-rimmed. "Is she coming?" Patricia asked quietly. "I don't know," Daniel admitted. "I left her a ticket at will call. The rest is up to her." Patricia nodded. "What you're doing tonight, it's either very brave or very foolish." "Someone wise recently told me those two things are often the same," Daniel said. "My daughter?" "Your daughter." Patricia was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "I called Juilliard. I spoke with the dean. Dr. Vaughan was fired last year. There were other complaints, other students. If Maya had reported him—" "She was 20 years old and scared," Daniel said firmly. "Don't put that on her." "I'm not. I'm putting it on myself for not listening." Patricia's voice cracked. "I was so focused on her potential that I forgot to see her pain. What kind of mother does that?" "The human kind," Daniel said. "The kind who makes mistakes and gets a chance to fix them." The stage manager appeared. "Mrs. Chen, you're on in 5 minutes, and Mr. Parker, are you sure about this?" Daniel took a deep breath. "Absolutely not. Let's do it anyway." Maya sat in her apartment, still in her pajamas at 7 in the evening, when someone knocked on her door. Not the tentative knock of a neighbor or the aggressive knock of a delivery person, a rhythmic, jazzy knock that could only belong to one person. "Go away, Louis," she called. "Not until you open this door, Cher." Maya sighed and shuffled to the door. Louis stood there with his saxophone, looking uncharacteristically serious. "You need to go to the theater," he said without preamble. "I already told them no. I can't perform, Louis. I just can't. I'm not talking about performing. I'm talking about showing up. For your mama. For that boy who looks at you like you hung the moon, and most importantly, for yourself." "What are you talking about?" Louis just smiled his mysterious smile. "Get dressed, wear something nice, trust me." "Louis, Maya Chen, I have known you since you came back to this city with your tail between your legs and sadness in your eyes. I watched you slowly find your music again. Don't let fear steal your chance at something real." Maya looked at the old man who had become her friend, her mentor, her surrogate grandfather. "What did Daniel do?" "Something stupid and beautiful," Louis said. "Now get dressed. Show starts in 45 minutes and this traffic is a nightmare." 20 minutes later, Maya found herself in Louis's ancient car, wearing the red dress and clutching a ticket she had not asked for. Her hands were shaking. "What if I can't go inside?" she asked quietly. "Then you sit in the lobby," Louis said. "But you show up. That's the first step to everything else." They pulled up to the Mahalia Jackson Theatre, its marquee glowing against the night sky. The lobby was crowded with well-dressed patrons, program books in hand. Maya's chest tightened. "I can't breathe," she gasped. Louis parked and turned to her. "Yes, you can. Breathe with me. In for 4, hold for 4, out for 4, just like practicing scales." They breathed together until Maya's heart rate slowed. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay, I can do this. That's my girl." They made it through the lobby, through the doors to their seats. Orchestra level, left side, perfect view of the stage. The lights dimmed, the orchestra tuned. Patricia Chen walked onto the stage to polite applause. Maya gripped the armrests, fighting the urge to run. Patricia played Chopin, her fingers dancing across the keys with the precision and emotion of a lifetime's dedication. Maya had forgotten how beautiful her mother's playing was, how much love Patricia poured into every note. When the piece ended, the audience erupted in applause. Patricia stood, bowed, and then did something unexpected. She spoke into the microphone. "Thank you. Tonight is a tribute to local musicians, to the rich musical heritage of New Orleans. And there is someone here tonight whose music deserves to be heard." Patricia looked directly at Maya. "My daughter, Maya Chen, is one of the most talented guitarists I have ever heard. And I haven't told her that enough. I haven't listened enough. I haven't been the mother she deserved." Maya's breath caught. People were turning to look at her. "But tonight," Patricia continued, "someone who loves her very much has arranged something special. Please welcome to the stage, Daniel Parker." Maya's heart stopped. Daniel walked onto the stage in his suit, looking terrified and determined in equal measure. He carried an acoustic guitar, not Maya's, but a beautiful vintage instrument that gleamed under the stage lights. "I'm not a musician," Daniel said into the microphone, his voice shaking. "I'm a tech CEO who can barely play chopsticks, but 3 weeks ago I met someone who changed my life, someone who reminded me that feeling something, even fear, is better than feeling nothing at all." He looked directly at Maya. "Maya, you told me that music opens doors we didn't know were locked. You opened doors in me I'd sealed shut for 3 years. You made me feel again. And now I'm here to tell you something important." Daniel sat on the stool and placed the guitar on his knee. "I've been taking lessons every day for the past 3 days. I'm probably going to mess this up terribly, but you taught me that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's doing it anyway." He began to play. It was simple, halting, full of mistakes, a basic finger-picking pattern that any first-year student could manage. But he played the melody to Hallelujah, the song she had been singing the night they met. The audience was silent, transfixed not by technical skill, but by raw vulnerability. Here was a man making a fool of himself in front of hundreds of people because he believed in someone. Maya felt tears streaming down her face. When Daniel finished, the audience erupted in applause, not for the music, but for the gesture, for the courage. Daniel stood and spoke again. "Maya Chen, you are the most talented musician I've ever heard, and you deserve to play on stages like this, not just street corners. Your music matters, you matter, and I will sit in this audience and watch you freeze up 1,000 times if that's what it takes for you to find your courage again. Because you're worth it." He set down the guitar and walked off stage. Maya stood. She did not remember deciding to move, but suddenly she was walking down the aisle past the staring faces toward the stage door. Louis was behind her, and she heard him whisper, "That's my girl." Backstage, she found Daniel, breathing hard, his face flushed with embarrassment and triumph. "That was the stupidest thing I've ever seen," Maya said. "I know. You can't even play guitar. I know. You got up in front of hundreds of people and humiliated yourself. For you," Daniel said. "I'd do it again." Maya grabbed his face and kissed him hard. When they pulled apart, she was laughing and crying at the same time. "You're insane. You make me insane," Daniel said, in the best possible way. Patricia appeared in the doorway. "Maya," she said tentatively. Maya looked at her mother, at this woman who had pushed too hard and loved imperfectly, but was trying. "Mom, we need to talk. Really talk." "I know," Patricia said. "I'm listening now. I promise." The stage manager appeared. "Intermission is in 2 minutes. Is there going to be a performance?" Maya looked at the guitar Daniel had played, then at Daniel, then at her mother. Her hands were shaking. Her heart was racing. Every instinct screamed at her to run. But Daniel had just made a fool of himself for her. Her mother had just apologized publicly, and somewhere in the audience, Louis was waiting to hear what she would choose. "Yes," Maya heard herself say. "Yes, there's going to be a performance." Daniel's face lit up. "Maya, you don't have to—" "I know," she said. "But you were right. I'm tired of letting fear make my decisions." She picked up the guitar, the beautiful vintage instrument Daniel had somehow procured. Her fingers found the strings, testing the tone. Perfect, of course it was perfect. "I might freeze," she warned. "Then I'll be right here," Daniel said, "and when you're ready, you'll play again." Maya nodded. She walked toward the stage entrance, toward the lights and the audience and the terror that had defined her for 2 years. But this time, she was not alone. This time, she was choosing courage. Maya stood in the wings, the guitar heavy in her hands. Through the curtain, she could hear the murmur of the audience returning from intermission, the rustle of programs, the clink of glasses. Her heart hammered against her ribs like it was trying to escape. "I can't do this," she whispered. Daniel stood beside her, his hand warm on her shoulder. "Yes, you can. What if I freeze? What if I get out there and nothing comes?" "Then you'll have tried," Daniel said simply. "And that's more than you've done in 2 years." Patricia appeared on her other side. "Maya, whatever happens out there, I'm proud of you. For being here. For choosing to try." Maya looked at her mother, seeing her clearly for maybe the first time. Not as the demanding perfectionist, but as a woman who had loved imperfectly and was learning to do better. "Thank you," Maya whispered. Louis emerged from the shadows. How had he even gotten backstage? And pressed something into her hand. A smooth stone, worn soft by decades of handling. "I carried this in my pocket every time I played," Louis said. "My papa gave it to me. He said courage isn't something you find. It's something you carry with you. Now you carry it." Maya closed her fingers around the stone. It was warm from Louis's hand, solid and real. The stage manager gave the signal. "You're on, Miss Chen." Maya walked onto the stage. The lights were blinding. The audience was a dark mass of faces she could not distinguish. Her legs felt like water. The guitar trembled in her hands. This was it, the moment she had feared for 2 years, the moment that had defined her nightmares and stolen her future. Maya sat on the stool, adjusted the guitar, looked out at the darkness, and froze. Her fingers hovered over the strings, unable to move. Her breath came in short, panicked gasps. The silence stretched, became uncomfortable, became painful. Someone coughed. Someone else shifted in their seat. Maya felt the old terror rising, the certainty that she could not do this, that she would fail, that everyone was judging her, waiting for her to collapse. But then she felt the stone in her pocket. Louis's stone. His papa's stone. Generations of courage passed hand to hand, and she heard Daniel's voice in her memory. "You made me feel again." Maya closed her eyes. She thought about the night she first saw Daniel, this stranger in an expensive suit, crying on a street corner, because her music had cracked him open. She thought about how music had power not because it was perfect, but because it was true. She thought about Tommy, who had died before anyone could tell him his dreams mattered. She thought about her mother, sitting somewhere in that dark audience, finally listening. She thought about herself, the girl who had been betrayed and broken but had somehow survived. Maya's fingers found the first chord. The sound rang out clear and true in the silent theater. Then another chord, then another. Her fingers remembered what her mind had forgotten, the muscle memory of years of practice, of love poured into strings and wood. She began to play Hallelujah, the song that had started everything. But this was not Leonard Cohen's version or Jeff Buckley's. This was Maya's version, raw and honest, and full of every broken thing she had survived. And then she sang. Her voice cracked on the first word, but she kept going. She sang about cold and broken hallelujahs, about love and betrayal, about falling and rising and trying again. She sang for Daniel, who had reminded her how to feel. For her mother, who was learning how to listen. For Louis, who had believed in her when she could not believe in herself. For Tommy, who never got the chance to show the world his colors. For herself, the girl who had been too scared to try. The guitar sang beneath her fingers, each note a small act of defiance against the fear that had held her captive. Her hands did not shake anymore. Her voice grew stronger. The stage that had felt like a cage began to feel like freedom. When the last note faded, there was a moment of perfect silence. Then the audience erupted. People were standing, applauding, some wiping their eyes. Maya sat on the stool, stunned, the guitar still in her hands. She had done it. She had not frozen. She had played, and it had been real and imperfect and true. Patricia was the first person to reach her backstage, pulling Maya into a fierce hug. "You were magnificent," she sobbed. "You were so magnificent, baby." "I messed up the bridge," Maya said, half laughing, half crying. "You were perfect," Patricia insisted. "Not technically perfect, but perfectly yourself. And that's so much better." Daniel swept Maya up in his arms, spinning her around until she was dizzy and laughing. When he set her down, his face was wet with tears. "You did it," he said. "Maya, you did it." "We did it," Maya corrected. "I couldn't have without you." Louis appeared with his saxophone, tears streaming down his weathered cheeks. "Now that's music, Cher, that's the real thing." The stage manager approached apologetically. "Miss Chen, there are some people from the audience asking to speak with you. Booking agents, venue managers. I think you might have made quite an impression." Maya looked at Daniel, at her mother, at Louis. 6 months ago, she had been a street musician who had given up on her dreams. Now she stood backstage at a major theater with her people around her, and possibilities opening up like flowers. "Tell them I'll be out in a minute," Maya said. "I need a moment." When everyone had given them space, Maya and Daniel stood alone in the wings. The sounds of the theater swirled around them, orchestra members packing up, audience members filing out, the eternal backstage bustle. "I have something to tell you," Daniel said. "Remember how I said I might have committed career suicide?" Maya's stomach dropped. "What happened?" "Marcus and I have been working on a new business model. Instead of selling to tech venture, we're restructuring as a worker cooperative, employee-owned. It's risky as hell and we might lose everything." He grinned. "But we're doing it anyway." "Daniel, that's amazing." "I learned from the best," he said, pulling her close. "Someone taught me that expensive mistakes are sometimes the only ones worth making." "Sounds like a very wise person." "The wisest," Daniel agreed. He kissed her softly. "I love you, Maya Chen. I think I've loved you since you made me cry on a street corner." Maya felt her heart expand until it hurt in the best possible way. "I love you too, even though you're a terrible guitarist." "Hey, I've been practicing." "You play like a robot having a seizure." "Rude," Daniel said, but he was laughing. They stood there holding each other, both of them broken in different ways, both of them healing. Outside, New Orleans hummed with life, jazz pouring from bars on Frenchman Street, tourists laughing on Bourbon Street, the Mississippi rolling eternal toward the Gulf. Patricia found them a few minutes later. "Maya, honey, those agents are getting impatient, and the artistic director of the Sayanga Theater wants to talk about a residency." Maya took a deep breath. "Okay, I'm ready." She started to walk toward her future, then turned back to Daniel. "Come with me?" "Always," he said. 6 months later, Maya stood on the corner of Royal and St. Peter, her guitar case open at her feet. But this time, it was different. This time, she played here by choice, not necessity. She had performed at the Sayanga, had booking agents calling, had even been invited to do a small tour of jazz clubs along the Gulf Coast. But on Sunday evenings, she still came back to this corner. Because this was where it had all started, where a stranger had heard her music and cried, where she had learned that vulnerability was not weakness but strength. Daniel appeared, carrying 2 coffees from Café du Monde. He had powdered sugar on his tie, as always. Some things never changed. "How's business?" he asked, nodding at her case. "Good," Maya said. She had started donating her street performance earnings to a fund for student musicians who had been exploited or abused. So far, they had helped 3 young artists get legal help and fresh starts. "How's your day?" "Marcus says our Q3 numbers are strong. The cooperative model is actually working." Daniel grinned. "Who knew treating employees like humans would be good for business?" "Shocking," Maya said dryly. An elderly couple stopped to listen. The woman smiled at them, and Maya could see she was crying softly. When the song ended, the woman approached. "That was beautiful," she said. "My husband and I used to dance to that song 50 years ago." Maya watched them walk away hand in hand, and felt the familiar warmth of knowing her music had touched someone. This was why she played. Not for fame or money, but for moments like this. For connection. For reminding people they were not alone. "Play our song," Daniel asked, settling onto the curb beside her. Maya began to play Hallelujah, the song that had changed everything. Daniel hummed along, off-key and perfect. Tourists passed by. Street performers juggled fire on the next corner. Somewhere someone was playing trumpet, and someone else was laughing, and the city breathed its eternal jazz rhythm. Louis appeared, his ancient saxophone gleaming in the streetlight. "Room for one more?" "Always," Maya said. He joined in, his saxophone weaving around her guitar and voice, creating something spontaneous and beautiful. This was New Orleans. This was home. This was music in its purest form, shared, improvised, alive. When they finished, Patricia, who had moved back to New Orleans to be closer to Maya, appeared with a bag of beignets. "I thought you might be hungry." They sat on the curb together, this makeshift family of broken people who had found each other. They ate beignets and got powdered sugar everywhere and watched the city move around them. "You know what I was thinking?" Maya said, leaning against Daniel's shoulder. "What's that?" "Remember that night in the rain when you said you didn't know what my music meant?" "Yeah?" "I think I know now," Maya said. "It means that broken things can still make beautiful sounds, that hallelujahs can be cold and broken and still be holy, that it's okay to cry and be scared and try anyway." Daniel kissed the top of her head. "When did you get so wise?" "When I met a guy who was brave enough to cry on a street corner." Patricia smiled at them, her eyes suspiciously bright. "You two are disgustingly adorable." "We know," Daniel and Maya said in unison. Louis packed up his saxophone with a satisfied smile. "I'm getting too old for street corners. You kids have fun. Try not to be too sappy." "No promises," Maya called after him. As the night deepened, Maya played a few more songs. Couples danced, children watched, wide-eyed. Bills and coins accumulated in her case, which she would donate tomorrow. But the real wealth was here now, in Daniel's hand holding hers, in her mother's acceptance, in Louis's friendship, in music that flowed freely again, unafraid. Maya Chen had come to New Orleans broken, afraid, and certain she would never play on a real stage again. She had lost her trust, her confidence, her dreams. But sitting on that street corner, surrounded by love and music and the eternal rhythm of her city, Maya realized she had found something better than her old dreams. She had found the courage to dream new ones, and this time she was not dreaming alone.